Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to share some of our recent research and analysis on AI safety security, and great to see a lot of old friends recently. First of all, while we are waiting for the slides coming up, I think many of you may see some recent news. Yes, I'm Bo, professor at UIUC, focused on AI safety security research, and also co-founder and CEO at Virtual AI, where we provide a unified AI security and compliance platforms for enterprises like finance, healthcare, retail, etc. And recently, Virtual just joined Meta Superintelligence Labs, continue the mission of providing trust layer and governance and observability for the large-scale personalized agent. So really looking forward, and would love to discuss more details on technical side. So first of all, today, of course, this topic is very big, as we know. Like AI safety security, to me, is always the very important last mile for all the AI applications, especially agent and multi-agent systems, right? As we know from the various speakers today already, there are different, day-to-day vulnerabilities and like agent escape and all this real-world consequences happens currently. And therefore, without being able to confidently solving these problems to a certain extent, I think it's very hard for us to confidently deploy the agentic systems to real world, as we know. For example, some high-level vulnerabilities and like attack vectors we have seen so far, right? Here, as we know, like always, there are prompt injections and jailbreaks and data leakage, hallucination, brand risks, especially for enterprises, right? And on the right hand, there are some real-world examples. For example, some like say from OpenAI Atlas, the web browser agent can be attacked in terms of misleading to provide purchase for non-designed items, as well as in the front part is about a couple of months ago, the ServiceNow agent has been luckily a white hat found that the agent can be misled and therefore leak the whole customer database, which can cause hundreds of $billions loss. As you can see, there are a lot of real-world examples from trading market and from like finance examples as well. And therefore, the good thing is we have seen a lot of regulations and policies and a lot of great efforts from different like academia and industry and regulatory like compliance communities coming together and helping to improve and make sure our like AI applications, agents are trustworthy and secure, which is very important. However, as we know, there's still a very long way to go, right? And for this very short talk, I'll give very high-level principles about AI safety security. And of course, within each box, there are a lot of concrete details, and we'd love to discuss more, like it would take days to discuss, right? So I would say, based on my personal views and the research in this area for over 15 years, I think on the very high level, although this area is very big, but if we put them into different buckets, there could be three very important buckets we look into. And the first is the risk assessment. Usually we call it red teaming in the AI area, where it's very similar to pen test for software, right? So basically red teaming is a pen test for AI models, for agents, for multi-agent, right? And here, as you can see, if we consider different AI applications are empowered by models and agents, which can be adopted to different domains like finance, healthcare, autonomous, etc. And the first thing we need to understand the system is to do the stress test, right? And we can develop different skill set, different autonomous environment, and red teaming strategies and algorithms to provide the stress test to the AI systems, and therefore understand their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, in order to provide a better solution or governance for it. So I would say the red teaming is the first step, which is very important, right? And the second in the green box, of course, is that assume we have been able to solve to a certain extent of the red teaming, and therefore we know the comprehensive list of vulnerabilities and weaknesses of our agentic systems, for example. Then the second is how we protect them, right? And there are two ways of protection on the very high level. One is fundamental protection, which is you need to train the model such that the model is not only a probabilistic data-driven model as we are using now, but also it has some true reasoning, it has some fundamental component to inject or ensure certain AI safety security principles, for example, policies like EU Act and FINRA from finance, etc., can be ensure that the agent can follow, rather than just say give it as a system prompt and we don't know when and whether the agent will follow. That is quite of high uncertainty, right? But this is, of course, very challenging from the fundamental fixing the model and fixing the agentic workflow perspective, which has a lot of great and active research on it already, and we can touch a little bit in this talk. And the third layer is, of course, if we want to quickly use it and adopt it currently, and can we have a quick plug and play, like a firewall for traditional cybersecurity system perspective, like can we have a firewall for AI systems, right? And therefore, the third layer, the blue box here, shows the guardrail. Basically, it's a guardrail from different perspectives. For example, for agent, you may need the guardrail protection from the prompt level to the MCP level to look at, say, the MCP code, the vulnerabilities, and to the tool calls and the tool trajectories, so that you can understand the intent, understand the vulnerabilities, as well as the output and as a closed loop end-to-end. So with this being said, these three components, I would say, form the whole overall architecture of how we can protect and govern and secure current AI and agentic systems. And a little bit of detail into some of the box here. For example, first of all, as I mentioned, I do think the red teaming and the risk assessment component is quite important as a first step. Therefore, I want to go to a little bit detail about this red teaming process. So the high-level questions we want to answer here is, what's the risk assessment rules and the perspectives, because it can be very large, right? And how can we provide a comprehensive red teaming platform and strategies for our agentic systems? So here is an overall diagram, for example, as simple as the agentic system, right? So it has the core LLMs and has the tools and has the environment where the agent will interact with, which is very highly vulnerable, as you can see. So basically, if the agent interacts with like a website, and the website can have various injections, right? We can inject visible like reviews, and we can inject invisible forms, etc. So we have many, many papers on this to demonstrate that actually, if you interact with environment, is quite dangerous. No mention other types of environment like a database, and we can have secure injections, and all the traditional vulnerabilities, of course, will happen again to our like frontier agentic models as well. And no mention others like the supply chain of the agent and the core model like vulnerability itself. So basically, there are two principles on the right-hand side. Left-hand side that we're showing here. One is from what principles we categorize the risk perspectives, right? So there are two principles, I would say. One is the regulatory compliance principle. Therefore, we list here, for example, OWASP, Top 10, NIST, MITRE, like a FINRA, particularly for finance, and the EU Act, all this. So these are the frameworks that we can follow in order to provide a comprehensive risk assessment, I would say. And the second principle is a use case driven, where we have a NIPS best paper talking about from the use case perspective, what's, for example, hallucination, like data exfiltration, like misuse, etc., in terms of providing a landscape of this vulnerability space. And second is based on the agent type, right? Of course, it's very, very hard to provide a universal, secure, and compliant agentic systems, so that we may look into the like sectors, for example, like say computer use and tool use, and focus on these domains with whatever principles we can separate them, so that we can provide a more comprehensive and in-depth analysis and protection. So with that being said, the first thing I want to introduce, one thing is one of our work called the Decoding Trust Agent, and the short form DTAP. And if you're interested in, red teaming risk assessment for agent, welcome to take a look at this. We have open sourced everything and a paper online. The only thing we didn't open source is a red teaming agent, because we want to make sure that the agents are not, overfitted to the attack strategies. The unique thing here, I would say, is threefold. One is that, as we know if you want to do red teaming for agent, you need an environment, right? You need a sandbox. And the sandbox is different with the current like agent sandbox, like you only have the file system inside, but you need to connect to other external MCP tools. The moment you connect to the external MCP tools, all the vulnerabilities could happen, right? With this being said, like this like overall platform contains over 50 environment, all like one-to-one build, so that you can do the red teaming in this controllable environment, like a tool injection, environment injection, all this. And this is first of all the environment, and second of all, as the surrounding like a circle, you can see there is a red teaming agent which can provide like comprehensive red teaming strategies, including like a tool injection, skill injection, prompt injection, all this, all as well as their combinations with a verifiable judge, because you can go to the state and actually make sure the agent make transactions, or the agent delete files or not, so that you don't need to rely on like a little bit like uncertain LMS charge. This is the second thing. And the third thing is in the middle. As you can see, there are different domains. As I just mentioned, how do we provide a comprehensive risk assessment, right? We can not say like 50 is enough, 100 is enough, or 5,000 is enough, right? So therefore, we need to go to different domains. And here it includes like 14 domains. And from each domain, we look into the policies of the domain. For example, like finance, healthcare, etc. And all the risk assessment will follow in those domains and the policies, so that it can be particularly designed for certain domains. So with that being said, these are some examples of the environment, and with this framework, you can actually evaluate the helpfulness and the safety of different agentic frameworks and models, because as you know, these are actually two components with different combinations. This safety landscape could be different. So it's important and helpful from the platform. You can understand the component with certain types of ablation studies. And with that being said, very quickly from the protection side, after we understand the risk assessment and landscape. So basically, here is one example of shield agent. If you're interested, you can take a look at the paper offline. So essentially, again, the step is that we need to follow different regulatory principles and policies to extract the rules. And therefore, from protection perspective, you can provide the action graph to ensure not only, as we mentioned, like it's a probabilistic model, but also it has certain component that can provide certification, which I will not go to detail here. But essentially, it means that during runtime, you can provide the guardrail protection with certain level of guarantees because of this action graph analysis and certifications. With that being said, of course, from numbers, you can see it's much better. It has certification. And in the end of the day, I think want to mention that hopefully in the long term, like say, from agentic wording using like a population perspective, hopefully we can see a trend like internet, so that from the safety security perspective as the last step, if we solve this last step and as a community together, we'll be able to see a wide adoption of trustworthy like agentic systems. Thank you.